We're here with Christian Wolters with an O, President of Intrepid for Canada and Head of Sales and Marketing for North America. Christian, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to join you.
So, Christian, tell us a little bit about your background. How'd you get into Intrepid? What is the flow or the process? I know you're with a few other companies as well.
I joined Intrepid in 2008 until 2015.
And I guess you left for a bit and then you went back.
Yeah, I'm a true boomerang, which is an appropriate term for an Australian-based company. But I was employee number one or number two, actually, in Canada to bring in the brand from Australia into Canada. And just the year prior, there was we had opened up our office in Boulder, Colorado. So I opened up the Toronto office, and so I was kind of their original marketing manager back in 2008, just on the eve of the global financial crisis, which was interesting because I had originally come from Harley Davidson and I was working for Honda. And so I was working with some very strong marketing brand businesses, and applied all my knowledge to Intrepid and didn't realize that this financial crisis was on until the economists caught up and told us it was there. And so I was kind of really doubting my skill set. But then, of course, as soon as that dissipated, we started seeing some business increase because we literally started from scratch, from zero. So it was really exciting.
Yeah, I can imagine you sitting there being like, what is going on? Why is...
Yeah. Yeah, we opened up with a storefront. So we actually had a shop on the street. We worked in the back of it. And so I had a sales team that would accept walk-ins and phone calls. And, they were just bored out of their minds. The phones weren't ringing. They're doing cartwheels. And there's no greater pressure when your sales team is just like, come on, marketing, we're bored.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And then I had the opportunity to go to a startup, a tech startup called Tour Radar. And I was with them for 9 years. The last 4 years, I was their CMO. And it was a really rare and exciting opportunity for me to join the technology space with my expertise in the multi-day tour, the organized adventure area of the business. And it's an area that, it's staying with me on the technology side, because I host something called Travel Tech 2 or Tech TO, what we have here in Toronto, where we get a lot of the travel startups and technology specialists to kind of join in once a quarter to talk anything to do with technology and travel, and we have all different levels. So obviously for me, what that means is, as a marketer and salespeople, as how do we use artificial intelligence to, improve and improvise what we do with marketing, and how we create tours, and how customers are eventually going to be purchasing multi-day tours, and currently now and in the very near future.
And what is your dream? If you could do something, in 5-10 years, where do you see yourself now that you're really at the top of the game in terms of one of the biggest, best companies in the world in this space? Where do you want to go next?
Well, right now we're on a 5-year plan for Intrepid, where we want to be over $1 billion company. We've got some pretty set targets. We've got a plan, and it's quite exceptional for this realm of the industry, of the travel industry, because there's not too many $1 billion multi-day tour companies out there. So that's the one thing we want to get there, and obviously it's going to be a very complex path to get there, because obviously we're going to have to get our branding right, our sales and marketing right. We're going to have our operations correct. And I'm looking at it from a North America outbound perspective. And one of those aspects is our website. I come from Tour Radar, which everything, we got up every day thinking about how do we improve the website, and we had lots of engineers to support that. In Intrepid, we're very focused on the product, meaning not the product of the website, but the product of the tours that we actually deliver to customers. And so the website is taking a bit of a back seat, but we need to make this kind of the put this at the forefront, because we know North Americans are very big on e-commerce. What I'd like to do is, I know, the holy grail in the industry right now is, now you can go on ChatGPT or use one of the other AI platforms to, put together an itinerary for you. But at the end of the day, you still have to book that itinerary. You still have to go out there and travel it and do it. What I'd love to do is create that bridge, so that, whether it's your own AI agent that's able to take your parameters for a trip and go out there and actually be authorized in some way to purchase that trip, and then it comes back at you and goes, Josh, you know what, on Thursday afternoon, get on the plane, because we're going to take you to East Africa, and it's all set up for you. I think that's the holy grail that hasn't been created yet. We've got lots of itinerary planners. We've got lots of people that create the tours, but that bridge hasn't been connected just yet.
Yeah, no, that sounds like, it sounds inevitable. The question is, getting there, doing it right, and doing it quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I could see a world where you land and you've got these audio books, these audio tours, all these other things you pointed and say, but all that being curated to, Josh, remember when you used to have that bicycle when you were 7 that was red? Isn't that look a lot like, there's a whole bicycle company right here, you should check it. That kind of really scary, personalized element though, but could be really exciting, right?
It could be like that, or it could be even the opposite, where you plunk your phone in a basket and, and then you do the rest of the tour unplugged, and you escape all that world for 10 days and immerse yourself. That's another trend that we're seeing. I'm not saying it's gained huge momentum yet, but there is people asking for it right now.
Yeah, it's funny because obviously everyone could do it on their own, but having the kind of organizer be like, okay, every one of you do it. Because that's the problem. I can sit in a train and know that nobody's on the phone, but somebody's going to be on the phone. I need somebody to take control of that experience, and then I'm very thankful for it, right? But
absolutely, and it's and it's all great when like I've done a lot of solo travel, and I've done a lot of travel that I actually had to plan and organize myself. But if any of that time, if anything went wrong, I was always on my own. I had to get the help of my fellow travelers to get me to a clinic, or go to the embassy, or whatever the issue might be. You're on your own, but when you have the infrastructure in place of a tour and all that, then you've got a helping hand to kind of sort out those things. And I think that's it's like insurance. So you don't plan to hit anything, but it's good to have.
Yeah, exactly. And you guys offer that, or you guys have partners with companies?
Yeah, absolutely. It's mandatory, for our trips, that everyone has an insurance plan in place.
Well, we have actually some minor overlap. I worked with Harley Davidson when I was at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, and we were trying to help them get into the China market. And there was a big issue where the Chinese government didn't want any large motorcycles inside the third ring road, which was, they have rings in Beijing, and so we were trying to lobby the Ministry of Transportation to let these giant, loud motorcycles come in.
Were you successful, or?
No, and I have to say, I mean, everyone should have the freedom to do what they want to do, but I find that they are very loud and do infringe. And the guys who ride them were not any help, because you had a lot of these very wealthy Chinese who were saying, I'm going to get a big Harley and be, and they would do whatever they wanted. So you'd see them going through traffic. And so it made it kind of hard to push for that. So they ended up, they're strong in China, but they did have some of those policy issues they had to work on. So
absolutely, I know. I also briefly worked for Kawasaki, or for about 4 years with Kawasaki, and they were releasing a motorcycle that could go in excess of I think it was about 200 miles per hour. And of course, the legislation around the world that were trying to block these things, because it was an out-of-the-box motorcycle that could go in those speeds, and I think France was at the forefront of trying to push it away. So then they actually neutered the motorcycles down, so the ones, so we received 3 that they were like rocket ships. And then afterwards, the ones that came after never went as quick. And we actually had to crush the first original 3. We had to destroy them and show that the serial numbers on the bikes were destroyed and everything. So it was a very sad day for a few of us.
Yeah, I would imagine that's one of the things when people ask, like, could they go this fast? And like, oh, guess what? There's a new motorcycle that goes this fast. Like, well, actually, they could go 3 times as fast. So,
Yeah.
now transitioning from the motorcycle industry, obviously there's an adventure element to that too. Does Intrepid offer motorcycle trips and things like that? Or?
No, there was no real deep connection there.
Yeah.
I was a natural traveler. I backpacked on 2 big trips. I did a 4-month trip through Europe and down into the Middle East and into Africa. And then my wife and I took a year off a few years after and traveled around the world for one year exactly. So, knocking off, I guess, between the 2 trips and since then, knocking off about 60 countries or so. I just happened to kind of find out about this industry that, there's these small group adventures, these multi-day adventures that are being sold to customers, and that it more or less facilitated what I did on the road, which was tough, because we were always planning. But I had a lot of free time back then. But I know now, having a family, having a job, it's very difficult to kind of have those experiences, and that's what Intrepid kind of solves. Is it gets you out there, fully planned, experiential holiday, local guide, local transportation, really gets you to experience the whole country.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think it's true is that a lot of people have a mindset of adventure. Their knee-jerk reaction is, well, then I'll just do it myself. I'll organize it myself. But if you have somebody who does it for you, you can go to those farther places that you might not naturally do it yourself for. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're being lazy. It means you're actually getting to expand even beyond your comfort zone. So.
Yeah, well, I had that insight. I was in Africa on backpacking and hitchhiking, and at one point I had this old bicycle that I managed to purchase, and I was riding down the road, and I'd see these big what they call overland trucks blasting by with these students, and I could see that the ground they were covering in such a short period of time. They saw a lot more of Africa than I managed to accomplish. No doubt I had some incredible adventures along the way, but I can tell you, when you have a 10-day trip and, you make a few mistakes, one day here, one day there, it's a big percentage of your whole experience where an organized adventure really sort of takes care of those elements. But they're usually structured in a way too that, you have morning activities, and then in the afternoons you have free time to explore and do your own thing and get away from the group and all that. So yeah. It's kind of the balance of best of both worlds, I would say.
Yeah, I've noticed that in some cultures they like taking group travel, and some countries or some cultures they like to go more individual.
Definitely. I mean, for us, the Western culture, like Australia, US, Canada, UK, are typically, we have a very common desire to travel in small groups and have experiences, have a local leader. That was one of the big changes that we had to make a few years back. Was in the old days, when I say old days, like maybe 10, 15 years ago, if you did multi-country, let's say through Europe, you would probably have an Australian leading you through it. But now it's like people demand, like, I'm in Italy, I want an Italian guide. I want a person that's, grew up in that little village, that knows the pizzeria and knows to have that experience, of course, speaks the dialect. So that's really critical. And that's what we had to change. It made it tough because international, like an Australian might have a passport that gets them across borders a little bit easier. But it's very important that we have that change.
Yeah, it's almost like if you succeed, which you have, you've created a much more discerning and much more demanding community, because if they wanted somebody to take them through from their own country, they could find that. They want the Intrepid experience, right?
Exactly. Like if you're just if you're just taking them, use Italy again, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, just the main attractions, and then they go home. I mean, that's what gets them booking the trip, but it's the local, meeting a local family, going to that really sort of hard to find restaurant. It's, experiencing someone crafting something for the first time. That's what really gets them coming back and demanding more. And that's where our category is really growing. It's becoming a much bigger thing, even though like touring's been around forever. It's been around for thousands of years. people are sort of rediscovering it now because I think there's some negative connotations around it. A lot of people think of the big bus tours and you're following a person with a flag and you're kind of like, herded like cattle onto into areas. But typically we offer experiences at around 15 people or less, on average around 10 people. So your guide to your tour leader to customer ratio, you're having private conversations with them all the time is really good. And you're getting into the smaller restaurants that the bigger buses can't get into. So these things are really, really important, and people are really experiencing it. We've seen sort of exponential growth since at least since I started in 2008.
Yeah. No, and I guess also they're saying the tour is an opportunity to meet like-minded people in a small community or a group. For example, singles travel.
Absolutely. It's our what we call our solo traveler category. So what we do is we set up a lot of like pre-packaged tours with set itineraries, and we try to create different travel styles for different market segments that are out there. And then also on top of that, we do what we call tailor-made. We create something, we craft something completely unique for you based on on what your needs are. But when we see there's trends like solo travelers, we just were involved with a survey study with Journeywoman, and the plus 52, like women that are over 50 years old, there's a huge percentage of them that are solo. Either they're divorced, they never got married, maybe their partner's passed away, or they're just traveling alone, and they've left their husband behind, type of thing. There's a huge percentage of that group that are traveling solo. So they have a unique set of demands, and we have to kind of oblige for it. A lot of times, we double up people into rooms, and sometimes they want what we call single supplements. So only one person in a room, they don't want to share that. So we have to offer those opportunities as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine you see very interesting nuances around different communities or people and demands. What's the weirdest demand or need that you didn't think was a need that you've had to meet?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think the most challenging, the one we want to try to solve, is one for disabilities, like where people are trying to, either they have current disabilities or they're getting older and they can't get around, but they still have the mindset that they want to travel. So typically what we say, if you can take public transit, you can get on and off a bus or onto a subway system, you have enough you have enough skills or you have enough mobility to get onto on one of our experiences. But every now and again, you get some people that are 80 or 90 years old, and they're very mobile for their age, but we're very, very fearful for them because we're worried, if there's an accident or something like that. We're really concerned, but they're usually probably the toughest, most resilient customers we have. Yeah. So it's really, really cool.
It really makes you redefine what it means to get old and what you want to do when you get older, right? So
exactly. I mean, when you have an adventurous spirit, it's not like you just say, I'm 75, I'm done, I'm just going to sit in the living room and watch TV now. If you have your health and your mobility and you're blessed with that, then it's you usually still want to go travel as much as possible.
Yeah, so let's talk about the transition right now in the current global dynamic. What's going on in the world? Has it made you almost more of a necessity because people don't want to go on their own? They want to kind of have somebody who knows it, or has it overall been a challenge? How could you describe that impact?
Yeah, it's definitely been a challenge. As a company that travels to multiple countries, it has people from different backgrounds. We're very big proponents of giving accessibility to our trips to everybody. So whether you're gay, you're straight, you're from a different country, different skin color, different religion, we try to wash that all away and say, hey, everyone's welcome. And obviously some of the challenges that some of that's being challenged on a global scale. So what we felt in one of the areas that we're looking into is, our national parks, both in the US and Canada. And there's been talk of some defunding going on there. And we want to try to raise awareness around the parks, how important they are, how important the Aboriginal communities that support the welfare and the maintenance and management of these parks is so important as well. And this is something what we want to bring to light. I think, on a more practical standpoint, there's a concern now, there's lots of reasons why people don't like crossing borders right now. If you look at it from the Canada-US context, where as Canadians, we're a little bit protectionist right now. We're a bit worried about becoming the 51st state. As much as we love the US, it
would make travel a lot easier for you guys. I don't know.
Yeah. It seems like it would be right now, but we're very proud to be neighbors, but unique and different. And so there's a lot of people that right now are protesting. They don't want to cross the border for that reason. They want to make sure, also because of the tariffs and everything that are in place, that they want to make sure that their money is being spent on the Canadian economy to kind of counter that. And last but not least, there's a bit of concern about, okay, I'm going to cross the border. Are they going to look at my phone? If I've written this or said that, is that going to be a problem or not when I cross? And some universities I know in the US have put some travel warnings and stuff out. So these are all having negative impacts to natural travelers going into the US. Also, we're seeing Americans are a little bit nervous coming out because they're worried about the policies that are in place. Are they going to get an earful from everybody they meet, from Canadians or internationals going, why is he doing this, or what's happening here? And so it's sadly had a bit of a negative impact. So what we see, it doesn't matter what the situation, whether it's a political situation or a war or a volcano exploding or whatever, people migrate to different areas, or they travel to different areas. So we're seeing a lot of people, switching their trips from the US, let's say if I use the Canadian outbound market, they're going to Europe. We're seeing Europeans go to other parts of Europe, or they're going to Southeast Asia. So that's kind of where things are kind of changing right now. But that's more short term. That's not like it's going to be a long term. I think once things settle down a little bit and hopefully we get past the tariffs, things will get back to normal.
You've traveled all over the world. How much of what you've learned are you bringing back to your team? You've talked a lot about supporting your team, and what does that mean? And how does your background and your perspective kind of make you maybe different from other team leaders, let's say?
Okay, yeah, no. So in general, as an adventurous person, maybe as a Gen Xer as well, I was left to my own devices when I was young, and I've kind of have that management style where I like to bring up my team. I give them guardrails, but I don't give them strict parameters. I don't micromanage. Sometimes I know that there's some people in my team, they would probably prefer more structure if I had provided it, but typically I don't provide those layers. I provide general guidelines and almost a bit of baptism by fire, but I don't, I'll bail them out. I'm not there I'm not providing a sink or swim environment. It's more just like, learn. The best way to learn is make mistakes. If we think that we're going down a path that is going to have a profound or a very big mistake, I'll jump in and hopefully course correct so we don't get into those scenarios. And that's kind of like traveling. If you're really exploring, you can kind of go, okay, well, I'm going to follow, I'm going to just go to the main attraction. I'm going to go down the main road. And I'm going to go straight back to the hotel and eat at the hotel bar. Or you could be like, no, I'm going to go out and find a really cool restaurant. I'm going to meet a local, and we're going to walk over here. It's going to be late at night, and you're going to take a local piece of transportation and have some experiences. So kind of I bring that to a business context as well. It's also like I'm an avid sailor, so I sail quite a bit. I own a boat, and I've sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, and it's all about you take immense risk, but it's more or less like you try to reduce that risk by putting measures in place, right? You try to have a boat that's running as efficiently as possible. It's got all the safety equipment on board. You have all the tracking computers for weather and for GPS and other boats that are coming at you. You make sure you're trained and you have all the facilities. If there's anybody on board that's new or you haven't sailed with, you kind of train them in some of the basics so that if something goes wrong, you're there. And then you kind of go out and have a good time. And then you say, hey, you want to go in that direction? Let's go in that direction. And you kind of have the adventure, but you kind of know that you always have that foundation in place. And again, that's how I treat business as well. If we have the correct metrics and monitoring and measuring in place, we put a good plan together, but then we go for it. We don't plan forever. We don't get stuck on the dock, so to speak. We get out there and yeah, there's going to be risks, but it's all organized and measured.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's kind of like you control everything you can, understanding that there'll be a lot of things you can't control or that you don't want to control. There's an improvisation within a structure.
Yeah, there's an example, a funny example on the sailing front where like there's these magazines that cover these situations where a flotilla, a group of boats go into a storm, and then they say how each boat fares based on their preparation. And so there was this one guy, he was so prepared, he had everything organized, but he just went early and he got caught in the heart of the storm and he took the beating. And then of course there was this one boat that their prop fell off as they were leaving the dock. And so they had to tie up and they missed the storm completely. So everything I just said, there was also fate as well,
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so, okay. Example of in your work, whether it's in Intrepid or anywhere in your life, but in a work environment that you have felt that you either evaded a major catastrophe or you went right into it and you had to deal with it. Any examples there?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably multitudes of those. I think, one of the big ones was I think of Harley Davidson, actually. So I was running a drag racing program. I didn't know anything about drag racing. I got put into it. Like Christian just managed this important arm of our racing facilities. And there's not a big drag racing motorcycle culture in Canada. There's not a lot of drag racing tracks and strips and all that. And I hired two specialists to kind of help us, prepare for this one race that we decided to have in the province of Quebec. And I didn't know, but some 101 on drag racing and motorcycles is that you can't have a guardrail on the side. You have to have like a wooden or a concrete wall, because a guardrail is it's described as, if you wipe out, it's like a cheese grater, while a concrete wall, you kind of slide off and bump off of it, to be brutally honest. And so I had all the dealers there. I had everybody, the shebang, the whole community was there. And then the official comes out and goes, there's a guardrail here, can't run the race. And then then I had about 150 people swivel their heads and look at me like, why the hell did you organize this? And I looked at as the guy in charge, I looked at the people that were, that I had advising me, and they were just kind of, I don't know. And so it was all on me. And that was very, very, a very big hole to dig myself out of, let me put it that way.
Did everyone just go home, or they had a little bit of a party, or? Yeah.
Everyone had to go home, and I had one of the hardest talks I've ever had. I was on absolute eggshells, I couldn't. It's so what I learned. I mean, what I learned from there is that in any big decision, that especially in areas that you're not familiar, you're going to bring in experts to come in. But for me, what I learned from that is always question the experts. Try to understand why they're giving you that advice. So if I had said, okay, like you say, this is a safe facility. I see it has a guardrail. Tell me a little bit more. Like, I know some have concrete walls. Obviously, easy to trip on that type of thing. But I'll never take it for granted again that I'll have a specialist and just go, they're the experts. I'm just go, yeah, they signed off on it. I'm gonna run this event around it. I'm gonna be a bit more critical.
That's actually a really, I would imagine it occurs a lot where in Intrepid, you've got local guides, you're on the phone remotely. By definition, you haven't been there. You've got people who are doing it quite often. You have to build enough of a rapport so that when you're they understand that you're not coming in as a critical eye, as a foreigner, really trying to understand, like, well, tell me why you think it's safe to go up into this mountain at this time and with this type of equipment. And if you don't do it right, you can kind of alienate or build a barrier, I would imagine.
Absolutely. And that's it, that you'll get customers that will want to take bigger risks than the tour leaders allowed, or the guide or the group wants to accomplish. And I think that's why we offer flexibility in our tours, so, we'll do a safe hike. And, like a few years back, we were running trekking adventures through Nepal, which we still do. And there was a massive like monsoon that came in. And when monsoons hit the Himalayas, it turns into a giant snowstorm. And of course, there was avalanches everywhere. And luckily for our group, there's always an encouragement that you want to get to the next town and complete the tour on time so you can catch your flight and you can come home with all your photos and say you've done it. And there's nothing worse than your guide saying, we're staying put here because everything in front of us is now an avalanche zone. And unfortunately, there are tour companies that either are cash strapped or don't have those safety protocols in place. And they went ahead, and sure enough, a lot of people lost their lives during that year. I even had to do some interviews around, we didn't lose anyone, but I had to do interviews about safety protocols and how we kind of mitigate these type of things. And it's a tough one, but I can imagine on the ground, the guide was probably having a tough conversation with his team, saying, we're not moving on until further notice.
Yeah, no, I've been, we went trekking through China, rural China, and there was a landslide, I remember, but we couldn't go. We had to basically cut our trip 2 days short. And yeah, you spent all this money, you're there, you've got your friends, and you're like, I don't know you, so maybe you're being hyper concerned, and I'm not, my risk tolerance is higher than yours. And the language barrier, I could see people really, if you're not listening, or you're not the type of person that wants to listen, you could really bully your way through it and get hurt.
Absolutely. It's so the guide is the most, or the tour leader is the most critical element of every excursion that we offer. I've been on some non-branded, some fly-by-night companies, and disasters happen pretty quickly when you don't have a good leader on the ground.
How do you vet your leaders?
We're different because we're very vertically integrated. So we have a destination management system. So we have literally, like roughly around over 50 different country offices all over the world. And so we have local management that are meeting the guides and the leaders, and they're interviewing them and learning about their core competencies and stuff. And so we're not contracting out to other tour operators or whatever, like many other operators will do that. They'll just kind of put a blanket brand over everything, but really what you're getting is a whole potpourri of different operations. From there, it comes down to sometimes we'll just train them. So if they're new, they'll shadow a new leader. We train them in medical. We train them in risk management. How to deal with a Western customer. All these type of things, so that the customer has a really good experience. And then of course we make sure they have all the safety equipment on the vehicles and stuff that they need to on board. But it's really critical, because when things do go wrong, because we have such a high volume of customers, things happen. You sometimes, as best as you try to mitigate that risk, things do happen, but they usually are almost 100% mitigated or completely avoided from something becoming much worse, because you've got a really good crew on the ground.
I want to talk global expansion. So when we talk about global expansion, what were some of the challenges, or continuously the challenges, that you find when you're going into a new market, and how have you dealt with that?
Do you mean like going into a new market where we're traveling in the market, or it's an outbound market? Or
no, where you're, for example, as Intrepid, you're saying, hey, we want to set up a new operation in this country. From an operational and a business standpoint, the marketing, the logistics, the local staff, what are some of the things that do you have it already down to a science? I mean,
our operations are, because we have more numerous offices, we do have it pretty close to a science. So We have regional specialists that kind of move into that country. So, for example, in Europe, we have this one guy who he's, I don't know how many countries he's now lived in, but, he knows how to open up an office, starts, he leases a building, hires his first set of tour leaders and whatever background operations people they need. And it's run like a machine. They really know what they're doing. Of course, we didn't always have that expertise. We're a company that started with two Australian founders that literally bought a dump truck, converted it for 6 or 7 of their friends, drove across Africa, and that was the first tour. So you can imagine all the mistakes and antics that must have happened on that experience. But nevertheless, it was the genesis for Intrepid today. And then on a sales and marketing front, like I can speak kind of more personally on that. It's getting the local management and local leadership. So me as a Canadian marketer, first opening up the doors here in Canada, knowing who are the big media players, how we should get our name across, what kind of branding, what kind of digital advertising is going to resonate with our customers here, what's the appropriate language. I don't mean English, but I mean the tone. Like for example, when I first started, we had tons and tons of Australian created creative, and they have a really good sense of humor, but it doesn't always translate to Canadians. And so there was lots of little tweaks here, and I had to push back a little bit, just to say, oh, this is not going to resonate, and they had to trust their new Canadian marketing manager to make that happen. But those are the kind of things that are really, really important.
Do you have an example of one of the things that they were going to try that wasn't going to resonate?
Oh, they'll probably beat me up for this, but there was this is years and years and years ago. Actually, no, I'll tell a different story. It's a bit of one where I made the mistake.
Okay, better for you.
Better for everyone, and it's something I publicly share. But when I first started Intrepid, I had no familiarity with responsible tourism, with animal welfare. And our overall policies and procedures is something that's really paramount. We've only gotten better at it. One of the things we did back in 2010 is we banned elephant rides. We were the pioneers behind that. It was a big discussion between salespeople and our purpose people, our responsible tourism people. So the sales team was saying, like, everyone that goes to Thailand wants a photo of themselves on an elephant. And the purpose people taught us that, well, in order to tame an elephant, you literally have to beat it up. Like, you have to it's just horrible what they have to do to the poor animal to break it so that it's willing to carry us on its back. And it's just not a good thing. And what we ended up doing was getting more involved with elephant sanctuaries, hospitals, things that were better for animal welfare than for tourism. And we incorporated that back into our tours, and people just loved it. I don't need to be on the back. I'm still with an elephant in the photo. I'm actually know that my tourism money is going to go to these projects and things like that. So back to my mistake, I was, I had my big launch event. I took one of the major streets here in Toronto. I got permits. I had a huge parade. I had Brazilian jugglers and acrobats. I had dancers. I had all this really cool cultural thing. But I did actually have a few exotic animals on parade. Like some zebras and so forth that came from a local farm. That ran events like that. And sure enough, I got a call from the person in Australia. Somehow she got tipped off. Someone made a complaint, and it went to the WWF, so the World Wildlife Federation. That got fed up to Australia, and then I got a call, and I got my first education on responsible tourism and animal welfare. Well, the good thing was I actually turned it around. I actually reached the WWF and formed a partnership, and never looked back since. So it was really good.
I mean, there must be an internal, and there is currently in the world, but there must be an internal debate, as you said, between there's certain lines where it's like, are zoos bad, right? Like, zoos with certain amount of space may not be bad, but and they act as ambassadors to the community, but at the same time, there's definitely problems. And I presume within Intrepid, you've got different people on a spectrum that must be just a constant.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk yourself out of everything, when it comes to traveling, because I mean, at the end of the day, you can have the most eco-friendly multi-day experience, but you still have to get on a plane, to get
Right.
there, and that's kind of the paradox of responsible environmental tourism. In general, though, you have to kind of weigh the pros and the cons, and we kind of believe that, if people are traveling, they're meeting each other, they're being exposed to different cultures. They're learning why, a zoo, not all zoos are equal. And what is a good zoo or a bad zoo, or what. And that was the thing with, going back to the elephant rides, at the time, the salespeople, correctly probably thought that, wow, we're just going to hamstring ourselves, from selling tours. But now it's actually one of our it's actually just made our tourism completely blossom because of that, because they know we're pioneers in this area, and people want to do that type of travel anyways. They want to experience, they want to see animals in natural habitat as much as possible, or being looked after, versus be on parade or on display.
Yeah, that's really wonderful to hear. What a great discovery. And it's nice to, it's almost like the respect for your clients, where if you hadn't had that, the assumption is, well, people just want to do stupid stuff on elements. It's like, well, actually, the people, especially that probably go on Intrepid, are, they're not too dissimilar from other people that are caring about these things. They want to know and they want to care. So that's really cool.
That's it. And our customer base has grown exponentially. And in the beginning, yeah, we had very well-informed individuals that were across all of these things. But as we've gotten more successful, we've branched out. We're capturing a lot of people that don't have that background. They haven't been exposed to these ideals and ideas, and they get to experience it firsthand on our trips, and not in a preachy bad way, but it just in a hey, look, this is an example of how tourism is done properly.
It's like what you said earlier, you can tell them all you want, but when you get there and you actually see it, that's the best way to learn and to understand. Yeah. Christian, thanks for joining us on the VanBassador, and it's great to see you and learn more about what you're doing.
Appreciate the time, Josh. It was great having this chat.
I look forward to seeing you out there on the road.